from Eastern Europe and some of the emerging markets. One of the things to remember with this 30% growth, I mean, it's fantastic, but the market actually dropped by 50%. So for us to get back to where we were only a few years ago, we need 100% growth to get back to those figures from 2 or 3 years ago. So we're looking at probably a 3-4 year period to get back to that sort of volumes again.
Dr. Singh, what are the areas in the supply chain that you've seen coming under pressure to perform, to scale up because of the movement in demand?
As I said earlier, if you see, supply chain starts with the demand itself, right, and it puts pressure on every area. So, it is something very complex to say that what areas would be affected.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's a very fascinating term that you use called bullwhip effect. And I think that is something we'd like to know more about as you're seeing with companies. Are any of the companies or sectors experiencing what you call the bullwhip effect?
I think every sector has always been experiencing this bullwhip effect. It is nothing very new. What happens is that whether you are in bad times or good times.
Would you like to explain it to us? Because some of the people may want to.
All right. What happens is that, one of the things is that bullwhip largely came up from a very strong writer by Forrester, an industrial economics and an engineer who really wrote this book called Industrial Dynamics in 1961. And what he meant was that as you go up the supply chain, that means you go from the retailer to distributor to factory to supplier, each levels of supply chain pads up demand. Suppose the demand at the retailer level is around 100, you pad up by 20%, it becomes 120. You go to the distributor level, he pads up by another 20, 30, 40%. He wants to be comfortable in the supply chain. By the time reaches the supplier and sub-supplier, you have seen a bullwhipping of the kind which is around 200%, 300%. And all these, what you produce, because the major problem is that nothing is transparent or visible between all the levels of supply chain. There are a lot of other political dynamics between the organization and others that happen, and that leads to a situation where your inventory cost is amazingly high, and your investment in almost every logistics, facilities is going to be painful for you. So this is what happens. When you don't have visibility, it may happen. And when you don't understand the demand, you create this particular supply, and that may happen. A large number of people believe that bullwhip is according to the forecast. It is not. Bullwhip, as clearly we academicians teach and understand, is because of business-driven variability. You are not willing to factor in your macroeconomic parameters. You have a euphoric forecast. You build your capacity based on that. You have an amazing bullwhip. You are not willing to share information on all layers of the people, all layers of your organizations. You don't trust people. You don't have a complete supply chain solution which sees one and only single forecast that determine your supply chain planning. You have bullwhip. If you don't really want to see that you are able to react to each and every demand in the market, you have a large lead time, again you have a bullwhip. If you are not willing to see the dynamics of the market and the visibility at the end retailers, and you don't want to service it fast, you have full truckloads via bullwhip. This is theoretical, but very well put up by Professor Howley from Harvard Business School, Sloan, to really define this. In my capacity as a consultant, I have seen bullwhip everywhere.
Certainly it has acquired relevance. So have you seen it in effect or in play in India in any of the sectors?
I was just consulting for agrochemicals. It's a multinational. And what we found was that, if you see in terms of million tons of pesticides, that's called DDT, but they brand it into different brands. If you see what the demand was, on the aggregate, it was around 150 million tons.
Which period was that?
This is just very, very recent period.
Okay.
It's just the euphoric period that I'm talking about.
Okay.
In the market of Guntur. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the demand and you look at the standard deviation, there's a variation. Variation was around 200%.
Okay.
Meaning that if some of us who understand that what variations can do to demand. This is the volatility. Is 150% volatility. That means you are producing not 150 million tons of that pesticides. You are producing almost 3 to 4 times. The rule of the thumb, the safety stock all over the place, you are producing 450. And that can be the biggest challenge to you. So this is what happens. Okay. I saw it in a major multinational firm where me and one of my colleague who is sitting here in this thing, Nivea, I can tell you, and I saw in the global supply chain the paints. We are just seeing, we're doing a second phase of them and we're seeing the paints. So it's everywhere, whether agrochemical or lifestyle product, it's all there. I've seen it in one of the panelists in the other group, Godrej Sarali. And some of my, most of his colleagues have been my students there, and I made them do a lot of projects to understand the bullwhip effect, and we've seen it there. I think it is omnipresent, and that's something that is challenging, and that is where I'm saying that you need to be, the whole issue is how do you make your supply chain, if each and everyone in the supply chain see the same schedules and part, that's first question of transparency. Second question is how do you factor the causal variables of the macroeconomic variable. I see these are two major trends which businesses have ignored it, big or small.
Ashok, apart from the manufacturing side of things which experiences the maximum bullwhip effect, do you think on the distribution center level, warehousing level, or other areas where growth in demand, I don't know whether it would be fair to say that all the sectors may be experiencing the bullwhip effect, but general spurts in demand or fluctuation in demand. Any other areas of supply chain where you have seen the pressure building up in the recent past?
There are many areas. I mean, it's not just about the inventory we are talking about. See, the pressure is on having the right people, okay, and the proper infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, both a static infrastructure like a warehouse, okay, and also a facilitating infrastructure like roads, rails, so there's a tremendous pressure, okay. Everything is linked to, like I was saying, is the lack of information. The lack of information, the lack of sharing of information within the Indian supply chain system. Okay, how close you get into what we really call as the customer need, customer demand. Okay, that will ultimately decide the efficiency of your inventory management and reduce the bullwhip effect. Okay, unfortunately, it is so highly decentralized at the different nodes of supply chain. Everyone takes own decision as to what should be his buffer stock in order to ensure his customers' service levels are being met. Rather than looking at the overall supply chain and then how this supply chain as an integrated piece can help meet up a particular customer demand. So that's actually two different things. What is in India is happening is a way far away from what we can call as a true efficient supply chain system, which I would ultimately link it to the lack of proper information flow back and forth. Because the information has to happen on both directions. Both in the customer need has to flow back into your supply chain and hence to your manufacturing, and your manufacturing needs to share the information as to where exactly the material is available within the supply chain system so that the systems can interact with each other and then share it. Okay, like Sir was saying that within our own organization, yes, it's a fact. It's a fact that people plan for peak. So there is always a theory that we adopt when we do a consulting, when we do a warehousing design. We say that, okay, fine, ultimately you will have some kind of a peaks and troughs. Okay, if you have to plan for the peak, the highest of the peaks, obviously your infrastructure is going to be highly underutilized. So, but at least be prepared for 80% of the scenarios. So that only this 20 becomes exceptional cases, which you can always manage with some extraordinary effort. However, when you look at the stock projections, which form the basis of that particular design, they would have summed up all the peak situations and then they will demand. Okay, I mean, see, it helps them in the long way, primarily because in a dynamic business situation, product portfolios keep increasing. Okay, and because of the inefficiency of moving the material, stocks lie in the warehouse rather than going to the so the demands of the warehouse goes through enormous pressure. So they anyway need a bigger space. So by projecting a buffer, they play a very safe game. Okay, that's why it doesn't come to light. Okay, however, when you are to analyze the quality of assets every warehouse to carry, then you will definitely